get revenge on my neighbor, who turns out to be a high school teacher for over 20 years and he's loved in the community. Well, he messed with the wrong person. He keeps getting me fined by our neighborhood HOA for things that are so ridiculous, like my grass being a little bit too high, my garbage cans not being by the street lined up properly, and I'm getting fined cold hard cash for this. So when I discover something that he's up to very much illegal here in our state of Georgia, I decide to turn him in, and well, I might have gone too far by telling on him because his life is about to be changed forever.
Alright, so a bit of a background for everyone. I'm a 26-year-old man, and I recently moved into a new HOA neighborhood with my wife and daughter. We were thrilled to start this new chapter in our lives, but almost immediately ran into an issue with our neighbor. Our neighbor is an old man. He teaches history at the local high school down the road. The first few weeks, it was filled with these weird interactions, like him coming over to, quote, helpfully inform me that our garbage can was too close to the street, or that he didn't like the look of our mailbox. I laughed it off at first, thinking it was some kind of neighborhood initiation joke, right? I even joked back with him. Well, maybe you should be teaching aesthetics instead of history. Ha ha ha. You know, a basic knee slapper. But over time, it became clear that he was dead serious. This old man, we're going to call him for the sake of the story Mr. History, would make it to a point of strolling by our home and criticizing something new almost every single day. Sometimes, it would be something trivial like the color of our garden pots, and other times it would be something really intrusive like him telling me how to park my car in my own driveway. My wife tried to handle it diplomatically. She invited Mr. History over for some tea, thinking that maybe getting to know each other would be, soften his critiques. Big mistake. The entire time he lectured us on, quote, proper neighborhood etiquette. You would think this was the Boston Tea Party and he was doing a history reenactment, and even questioned the educational choices for our daughter. The constant monitoring, the snide comments about our lifestyle, the passive-aggressive hints, they all became a daily routine, and honestly, it's been wearing on us. I started to wonder if there's something more to his behavior. Could it be a racial thing? Could it be, a class thing? Or does he simply dislike new people moving into his neighborhood? Yeah, his neighborhood funny, right? I've tried talking to other neighbors, and they all give me the same shrug and just say, that's just how he is. After hearing that, I stopped acknowledging Mr. History's existence entirely. If he's outside giving me his daily glare, I just ignore him. I don't look at him. I don't say a word to him. If he starts one of his lectures, I walk away. He's not my dad. I've reached the point where I don't know what else to do, and I feel like I need to protect my family's peace and comfort in our home. The tension is insane, and my wife says that maybe I should try to mend fences with him. I've told her that I've had enough and that I'm not going to bow to his every single whim. Edit. Wow. I did not expect my post to blow up like this. Guys, thank you for all the advice and kind words. I didn't even imagine that a lot of people could probably be suffering like I am from a crazy neighbor. I will consider our next steps carefully and keep you updated. Update number 1. Thank you guys once again for the support and advice of my last post. Here's what's been going on in the past month. Mr. History has not let up at all. In fact, it might have even escalated. I've been doing my best to ignore him, just like many of you suggested, but he's been relentless, and to top it all off, I received my first HOA fine in the mail. The anonymous report? Yeah, it was about our lawn not being up to HOA regulations. I almost burst into laughter when I read it because I knew exactly who was behind it. But after the initial humor wore off, the frustration settled in. My wife could see how it was wearing on me. I paid the fine, but got outside, cut the grass, fuming all the while, and the next day I decided we need a change of scenery. I took my daughter on a father-daughter trip to a nearby Civil War battlefield. It Was meant to be fun, right? Educational outing and a way to escape the relentless stress of our neighbor and the torment that he was causing. While exploring the museums, we noticed the signs warning against cameras, video recorders, and the key to the story, metal detectors. My daughter and I were respectful of the rules, but what happened next left me stunned. As we stepped onto the actual battlefield, there he was. Mr. History off in the woods with what else? A metal detector, sweeping over the hollowed ground looking for relics or who knows what. I felt a surge of disbelief and a strange sense of opportunity. Here was this man who has been tormenting us with these rules and regulations, blatantly breaking a very serious rule himself. My daughter asked, "Daddy, isn't that our neighbor?" And all I could do was say, "Yes, honey, it sure is." I had a choice to make, and in the heat of the moment, I informed the property staff. Security got to the woods in minutes, and they detained Mr. History. I watched on with a mixture of satisfaction and shame. I guess he thought he was safe because he was tucked away in a corner or a crevice that you're not really supposed to go to. Luckily for me and my daughter veered off from the path and kind of explored on our own, and that's where we saw him and rushed to tattle on him. I was happy to have finally been able to do something about his behavior, but I did feel a bit guilty. Doing it out of spite, really. I mean, if this was some random person, I would have just minded my own business, especially in front of my daughter. On the drive home, she asked me why I had told on our neighbor, and she told me you're not supposed to snitch on people. Man, kids say the craziest things, and I did not know how to explain it to her. Feeling both vindicated and a bit like a hypocrite, I want to ask you guys this question. Am I the a-hole for reporting my neighbor when I caught him breaking the rules? And did I set a bad example for my daughter? Update number 2. Hey again, guys. I know it's only been 2 weeks since my last update, but things have taken an absolute shocking turn, and I have to share this with you. I need to share what happened now. After I reported my neighbor, Mr. History, at the Civil War battlefield, I thought that would be the end of it, but things escalated quickly, and a few days ago, the police, they came to our house and asked if I'd seen Mr. History at the battlefield, right here in my state of Georgia, or I'd noticed any strange relics around his property. Well, I was taken aback and told them that it was just a one-time father-daughter trip, but I did mention his odd behavior. The officer looked concerned and told me that Mr. History was actually arrested that day, and this had an opening of a much larger investigation because of the things that Mr. History said while in, the police precinct. Later that day, I watched from my window as police cars pulled up to Mr. History's house with a paper in their hand. It was a search warrant. I could not believe my eyes as they began to carry out box after box after box of what I believed to be relics from the battlefield stolen. That night, the local news confirmed my worst fears. Mr. History has been stealing Civil War memorabilia. I'm talking musket bullets, arrowheads, soldier keepsakes, even soldiers' bones. The sheer volume of items was staggering. Since we live in Georgia, this kind of activity on state land is a major, major felony. As the reality of the situation sank in, I felt a wave of guilt wash over me. Yes, Mr. History has been harassing us and even caused me some HOA fines, but my actions had led to his life unraveling in a way I never intended. Well, I guess I can just say he's the one who did it, but at the same time, I'm the one who told on him. My wife and daughter have been supportive, but I can see the concern in their eyes. Was I wrong to report him? Did I take it too far? My daughter asked me if our neighbor was going to jail, Daddy, and I didn't know how to answer her. This was supposed to be a lesson in right and wrong, but now it feels a bit more complicated than that. Edit. Guys, thank you everyone for your input and support. This situation is still unfolding, and I'll make sure to keep you all updated. It's a lot to take in, and your perspectives are helping me make sense of it all. Final update, 2 months later. Guys, I know it's been 2 months since my last update, and I've read the comments. You guys have been basically just asking over and over, where is the update? Well, to be honest, I've been wrapped with guilt. A bit of relief, though, and a sense of closure that doesn't feel quite right. After all the drama with Mr. History, my harassing neighbor, things seemed to calm down. He was released from jail a week after the incident and returned to his home. But the news around town was grim. He lost his teaching job at the high school after 20 years. Some students even reported seeing some of the stolen relics in the class, which only made the matters worse because the police showed up to the classroom. The day-to-day harassment stopped, and I felt a huge weight lifted off my shoulders, though, but something still felt off. I could not shake the feeling that I might have gone a bit too far. Even though I knew in my heart that I did, well, it was the right thing. A few weeks after the return of Mr. History, I decided to approach him, hoping to make a sort of amends. I was concerned about the old man. He was a shell of his former self, and I rarely saw him outside anymore, and before this, he lived outside. But when I knocked on his door, he wanted nothing to do with me. He looked at me with such contempt and anger that I could not say a word, and he simply shooed me away and pointed at the wall where he hung his shotgun. His eyes filled with a sadness I'll never forget. A few days later, I saw moving trucks in front of his house, and by the end of the day, his house was empty, and I realized I'd probably never see him again. The house next door remains vacant, and every time I look at it, as the grass is growing past HOA height limits, which reminds me, how ironic, I'm reminded of what happened. Although I'm relieved that he's no longer breathing down our necks, I still feel guilty, so I'm coming here for one last question to you guys. Did I do the right thing? Was there a better way to handle this situation? I feel like I might have ruined this man's life. Even though he was breaking the law, he loved the Civil War. Every single fact he knew about it. He even knew the soldiers' names, as he taught history in school. Every single year he would talk about the Civil War, like he was there. I'm left with a sense of unease, knowing that I played a role in his downfall, and my family and I are trying to move on, but the empty house next door serves as a constant reminder of what happened. Anyways, thank you for your advice throughout this. This is probably the last update. What's up, everybody? Mr. Reddito here. So I want to jump into 5 comments that I've compiled. A lot of them have a difference of opinion, and some agree with each other, and we'll figure out which one makes the most sense. Comment number 1 from History Buff 42. I'm appalled by the neighbor's complete disregard for history and the law. He should know better being a history teacher. Stealing from a battlefield site is not only illegal, but I think it's utterly disrespectful, especially when you started mentioning the soldiers' bones. Come on, that's a grave site at that point. OP did the right thing by reporting it. The consequences were harsh, whatever, but he only has himself to blame. Comment number 2. Honestly, this whole situation is a mess. OP should have tried to handle the neighbor's initial complaints without escalating things. Sure, the neighbor was annoying, but I think OP took the revenge way too far. And that neighbor, digging up historic sites, everyone sucks here. Comment number 3. OP acted within his legal rights and his responsibility as a citizen. If the neighbor had not been committing an actual crime, there would be no consequences to give. Yeah, it's tragic to see an old man's life unravel, but he should have thought about that before walking onto a federal land with a metal detector a couple hundred feet away from a museum. Come on. I commend OP for standing up to the wrongdoing. Comment number 4. This story breaks my heart. The neighbor was clearly in the wrong for what he did with the relics, but it seems like he was a lonely old man who lost his way. OP's decision to report him might have been legally right, but it lacks compassion. I wish there had been some other way to handle this without ruining a man's life. Comment number 5. Guys, I can't decide who's right or wrong here, to be honest. I mean, on one hand, the neighbor was undoubtedly breaking the law and harassing OP. On the other hand, OP's decision to report him led to a catastrophic consequence for the old man. It's a complex situation with no easy answers, and I think both sides have their flaws. So I can't see how this could be anything other than everyone sucks here.
So in my opinion, I'm gonna have to say OP is not the a-hole, and we just read some of the comments, and I have to agree with one of the commenters, who said it's completely disrespectful, not exactly for digging on the Civil War sites, but because the neighbor was messing with the bones of the soldiers, which were basically grave sites, and yes, that's incredibly disrespectful. I mean, finding a random arrowhead on the ground and picking it up and taking it, that's completely different from what the neighbor was doing. He knew what he was doing was wrong, and he was collecting all this memorabilia, but what I just really can't get over is the bones of the soldiers, because like I said, that's extremely disrespectful. But anyways, let me know your thoughts on this one, guys. Drop your opinions down below, but my opinion is, OP, you are not the a-hole. You didn't start this war, you just ended it. Guys, if you're new to the channel, my name's Mr. Reddito. This is Mr. Reddito's Revenge channel, where all the stories revolve around some sorts of revenge. So make sure you're subscribed to this one as well. I'll see you guys tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. See ya.